Hey you guys, what's up? I'm Ashley from heavenathome.org, and this is the Heaven at Home podcast, where my goal is to encourage you in your personal growth journey while being open, honest, and owning my story. We have faith-based conversations and tackle a bunch of different tough topics. Check out the description to follow me and learn more. Remember, you are fully known and deeply loved. Let's do this. All right, guys, here we go. We're about to get into it. What day is it? Is it Friday?
Yes.
It's Friday. We're recording this podcast. And so I actually had in mind to talk to you about this. And we had a call over the phone last week, and I mentioned it, that you were talking about how you have Lydia now, and you shared a little bit of your history in trying to get pregnant. And I was like, man, this would be like a really good topic to share. So before we actually get into everything, I wanted to ask just for you to share a bit about you and your marriage. You can give us some background here.
Okay. So my husband and I were what most people, at least from the area we're from, would call college sweethearts. We both went to Penn State. We met at Penn State, got engaged at Penn State.
Oh, cool.
And got married at Penn State. So that is where it all began. And we got married in 2014. We lived on, quote, my side of the state because he's from Pittsburgh and I'm from the east side near Reading, Pennsylvania. And if you don't know where that is... I don't know
any of these.
Okay, so Reading, Pennsylvania, if you ever play Monopoly, okay, you know the railroad?
Shape? Okay, the railroad. Okay.
It's Reading Railroad. It's not Reading Railroad. Everybody reads it as reading. So fun fact, that is where I am from.
Interesting.
So we lived on that side of the
Now we
state.
all know.
It's Reading, not reading. So many people say reading, and I'm like, oh.
You say Reading, and I think Reading, California.
Well, there is a Reading, California, but they spell it differently.
Oh.
So it's spelled...
So it's spelled like reading, R-E-A-D? Oh, that's how they
That's
get
why
you.
I wanted to clarify
Thank you. Good looking out.
So we lived on my side of the state. Basically, we got married right like a month after we graduated. We graduated in May 2014. We got married in June because I told him, I was like, well, I got to go to grad school. So we either get married now or after. And I didn't get into grad school. So we lived my side of the state. And then when I got into grad school, it was 2016. And that's how we got to North Carolina. Cool. So it was just us for the longest time, for the last 5 years.
5 years?
So 5 years up until we had Lydia. And then now we've been married at this point for 6.5 years.
Okay, so before we get into your story and a bit about your journey in trying to get pregnant, what would you say we need to know before that, like before you guys decided to start having kids?
So when I was 18, I was diagnosed with severe endometriosis. And when they had come to that diagnosis, they had done a laparoscopy. Don't ask me if that's the correct way to say it.
I wouldn't
But they
know.
did the exploratory surgery to either confirm or deny the presence of endometriosis. And this was something I was struggling with for a long time. But I didn't have a name to whatever was going on. And so the doctor said to me, he was very straightforward and to the point. And he said, with the degree of your endometriosis, expect not to be able to have kids or expect it to be hard. And so I was 18 when those words were spoken over me, and I knew nothing then of what I know now. So that is where I started when we were ready to start having kids.
Can you talk a bit more about endometriosis? Like, what is that? Like, what were the symptoms? What did it feel like?
It was, so, like you get cramps and you have PMS symptoms and all these things. And I am not a wimp in my book. I like to just be super tough. And so I would have really bad cramps. And I'm like, I just get really bad cramps when it's that time of the month for me. And so when I was, I think 16 or 17, I was like, this can't be normal. I remember I was walking around, it was actually Charlotte. This was when I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
And we were at a convention center, and I was walking with a friend, and I had to stop.
Wow.
And like I had to stop and hold on to something until the pain passed in order for me to keep going. But I kept saying I was fine. I was fine. Everybody deals with cramps. Like, don't be a baby. Don't be a baby. And then I actually got to the point where I was just nauseous all the time, which I had suppressed the pain so much that I was becoming nauseous from it. And it was the nausea. It wasn't the pain from my periods. It was the nausea that made me go to the doctor and say, I don't know what's going on. Like, why am I so, like, just crackers and ginger ale, and it wasn't getting better.
You know what you just said kind of reminded me of labor, because I was suppressing my pain for like, I was trying so hard to contain. I'm like, no one's gonna hear me scream or nothing.
Oh no!
I told the nurse, I was like, I'm nauseous. And then she's like, oh, we can give you something for that, like take some medicine or whatever. I was like, nah, I'm good. Next minute, I'm like turning over, throwing up. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
It's from the pain.
So interesting that you said that. My mind is like blown.
It's a reaction to pain.
That's crazy.
It's great. It is crazy. So that's where that started.
Well, it's good. It's good to know, because I feel like within like the past couple of years, I've been hearing about endometriosis. And so it's like interesting kind of getting like a closer view about what that's like and stuff.
So to answer your question about what it is, it's the lining of the uterus. So the thing that you shed every month when you're not pregnant, that grows outside of the uterus and it sticks to other organs around your body. So there's different severity levels. Mine was the most severe. Now technology has changed drastically. It's also hereditary. So if you are experiencing super painful periods, you're probably not being a baby.
Wow.
Especially if you feel like you're being stabbed.
Yeah.
You're not being a baby. It's always better to make sure that that's not what it is.
Yeah.
When if you're not sure, just go.
Yeah.
Just go figure it out.
For sure. Those details, that illustration, I'm like, oh my God, what the goodness gracious. Okay, so do you remember how long you and Josh were married around the time that you started? Or like, how did you even approach that going into marriage? Let's start there.
What, like kids?
Yeah.
Oh, so with those words being spoken over me, I said, listen, like we had talked about, do we want to commit to each other for the rest of our lives? Like, is this where we're going? Because if not, like, why waste our time? But obviously we felt very strongly about that, and we're like, we want to do this. And I was like, if you want to have kids, I need you to know there's a good chance I wouldn't be able to have kids. And he was like, that's fine, we can adopt. And we were like, okay, if that's the case, then that's what we'll do. So it was kind of like, I felt like, because that's what was told to me, if he wanted kids and it couldn't come from me, he needed to know that. For sure. But that was just, we were 19, 20. No, when did I meet him? 19 or 20. I love
hearing how you guys were like so intentional, even that young, with having those conversations. Because that's the second thing, like the having kids was one thing, but also you going to school is another. I'm like, yes, girl, you tell him.
Like, listen, I'm very, what's called choleric. There's no beating around the bush.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I probably should learn how to beat around the bush a little bit.
No,
but like,
I appreciate
I'm very
that's
to the
awesome.
point.
So then, okay, so you let him know, and then how long were you guys married when you decided you wanted to start, or like when you started having baby fever?
When I started having baby fever, it was 2.5 years into our marriage, but I was in the middle of grad school when I was like, what is this feeling? It is so strong. Like, I'm in some serious classes, and all I could do was think about, and grad school for speech language pathology is no joke. Like, that's hard. Yeah. I'm not lying. And I would sit there and I would just daydream. And like, okay, this is terrible to admit this. But I'd be on Pinterest, like pinning, baby ideas and all those things. And it was such a strong, like, feeling that it wasn't really a discussion. But I can tell you, when I realized that feeling was, I had asked God, what is it? Give me the desires of your heart. Yeah. I'm like, this timing is not very good. But if this is what he wants, exactly. Exactly. If this is what he wants for us, then he's going to provide everything we need, even though in the middle of grad school, like, there's people who have done it. Mm-hmm. It's more challenging. But I was like, we'll take care of it. So,
So then how did you bring it up with Josh, and like, how was he feeling about everything? Like, how did he?
Just like, maybe we should wait. But he was like, it wasn't really, it was more my mom who was like, you guys need to wait. Yeah. When I was like, Ma, like, I don't know what it is. This baby fever is for real. And he just kind of rolled with it. It wasn't, he wasn't against it. He wasn't like totally for it, but he's like, all right, we'll just, maybe we should wait, but
Okay. So now take us through like the journey with you. What was that like?
Starting from
wherever you want to start from.
Okay,
and I'll probably ask you
we'll start from that feeling.
Okay.
We'll start from that feeling because it was totally illogical to want to have a baby in the middle of grad school when it was January, February 2017 when I really started to feel that desire so heavily on my heart. And because of the endometriosis, I had several surgeries to remove the endometrioma is the correct term.
Is that kind of like the buildup around there?
Wow. Yep. Okay. And so I was told, the hospital I went to was a research hospital. I was told if I had an IUD, which I did not know what that was at the time, but I said yes. Don't ask me why. I didn't. The doctor
sure,
said,
whatever you say.
That's exactly what he did. He was like, well, research is showing right now, my research study is showing that women who have endometriosis, when they have an IUD, it helps to better control the growth of the endometrioma. So I had an IUD and I was on birth control. And I was on another medication, which I don't remember the name of it. So I was on a lot of things. And it was actually, so that was in early 2017. And then in the summer of 2017, around July, I was dealing with severe anxiety. And I didn't know it was anxiety. I kind of had a feeling it was. So I called my cousin who's in school she's getting her doctorate in psychology. And I said to her, I was like, I need to talk to you about some things. And I talked to her about what I was feeling. And this has been something I've been going through for years, but I never really knew what it was. I think grad school brought it out more. And she is like, it sounds like you're dealing with some general anxiety. And she made her recommendations of, going to a therapist and blah, blah, blah.
Can you give some brief details about that anxiety? Like what was going on that was like triggering you, or like what symptoms were you experiencing?
So there's a difference between panic attacks and anxiety attacks.
Okay.
The anxiety attacks were definitely, so for me, it's almost like, okay, if you picture a circle and a line through that circle as the gate, you have all these natural chemicals, your fight or flight system, that circle through your body when, you're in a dangerous situation. And with anxiety, it's almost like that flap is broken and it just keeps going.
Wow.
So, a racing mind, yes, absolutely. But a racing heart and just it's a really hard feeling to describe. Because I want to say anxious, but that can be different things. Just because you're anxious doesn't mean you have anxiety. For me, it was general anxiety. So, it could be things like finances, or it could be things like, you have due dates, or
school,
failing, or feeling like you're failing and just trying to keep up with so many things that I just remember being very shaky, overwhelmed, easily triggered.
And like, how was your performance? Like, were you still performing well despite that, or?
I mean, it could be the littlest thing would trigger like an anxiety attack. So like I could have all these things building. And then I remember I lost my Beats headphones, which those aren't cheap. So like for me, because finances was a trigger at that time, I just would cry uncontrollably. Like I could not gather myself. And there is so much more to it. It's really hard to describe that feeling.
No, but I wanted people to have an inside look at that part, because I feel like that's important.
Yeah. I don't, and like I said, I don't think I kind of had a feeling something was going on, but I wasn't sure. And this was years.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in college, we didn't have very good roommates, and that created a lot of anxiety. And I remember just reaching for the door, and the feeling that just, it's like it washes over you, and it takes over. And you're just on this in this alert state, like constantly, and you can't calm down and come away from that.
Okay, so you talked to your psychology friend, and she gave you some insight on that. What happened next?
So I said to Josh, she recommended going to see somebody, and maybe, some medication would help get me through it. And I was like, I don't want to be on that. Like, I had a couple classes in undergrad on those, and it was not something I wanted to do. So I said something to Josh, my husband, and he was like, well, like, then don't. But I knew I needed help. But I also knew that I had a God who was a healer.
Yeah.
And I knew this for a long time. This is not, it wasn't like in the moment, like, oh, God can heal me. This was like, okay, God can heal me. I had this thought over, the course of lots of different events, but I just never truly gave it up. So needless to say, that Sunday, after I had talked to my cousin about what I was feeling, and she made her recommendations, I was on the verge of an anxiety attack. I could feel it. I just didn't know when it was going to come. And we were getting ready for church. I said to Josh, I was like, I don't want to go today. You need to go. I have this, I have that, I have this. And then it was just a lot. Because I wasn't just in grad school. Like, I was also working, and I did a lot of things.
Were you doing both full-time, or how did that work?
Part-time,
Okay.
And then grad school is pretty much like full-time.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Intense. Yeah.
Very, very intense. And I was very overwhelmed, and I didn't want to go. And it was one of the first times that he was like, you need to go. Usually he's, okay, we could just stay at home and, watch church online or something like that. And he was like, no, you need to go.
Wow.
And I could just feel it. And the whole internal battle of, I know God can heal me, but I have to give it up. But I kept holding on to it because there was a sense of control, which sounds a little weird when you have anxiety. You would think, okay, well, just take it away and everything will be good. But I feel like also what was stemming from not stemming from, but the source was me trying to control things I could not control. So anyway, we got to church. We loved our church. We went to a really small church. Really small. I think it was like 20 to 30 people at most on a Sunday.
Cool. I feel like I grew up in that church.
So I was like, they know if you didn't come back the next Sunday.
Yeah.
But we loved it, and we had great people there. And we went, and the pastor's sister had flown in from California, and she was leading worship with him. And she called my name from stage, and she just started to speak to the anxiety that I was feeling. And in that moment, I broke down, and I was just like, I had to give it to God. Yeah. I had to give it to God, and I had all these, and I get goosebumps just remembering that feeling. I got goosebumps just then. But I had all these wonderful women surround me, and they were praying so hard. And I feel like if you were looking at it from the outside, it was like this battle, but we were winning, because we always come out victorious when we walk with Jesus. And so
literally I pictured like beautiful intercession moment.
I really feel like that's what it was, like having that outer body experience, but just finally like letting it go. And you're probably wondering, like, okay, well, what does that have to do with getting pregnant? After that whole thing was over, in that moment, I didn't realize it in that moment, I was released and healed of my anxiety. Wow. And it was pretty bad. It wasn't, I was anxious here and anxious there. This was building up over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. And she came down, so worship ended, which is the beautiful thing about a smaller church. There is no schedule, so you just kind of literally float with the Holy Spirit.
Awesome.
So she came. I had never met this woman, by the way. Never met this woman. She came over to me, and she sat down, and we talked about, what happened. And
so she, just to clarify,
go ahead.
She had called your name from the altar without knowing you.
I met her. So I met her, and we introduced names, but
gotcha.
We were on a first name basis, but we didn't know anything besides our first name.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay.
Anyway, wait, where was I?
So she comes to you after.
So she comes to me after. She comes to me after, and we talk about what happened, and then she said to me, she goes, "Are you trying to have a baby?" And I was like, what is this? And I said to her, the doctors told me to expect to not to, but I had this undeniable feel, like that baby fever. It was like, I just had to. And she said, you need to take your IUD out. I told you I never met this woman before. I told you. And she tells me, you need to take your IUD out. What is going on? Because I told her about the endometriosis and after that, like what they had, like everything that they had said. Wow. So she prayed with me, and her mom, the pastor's mom, her mom, them two prayed over me and prayed healing over my uterus and all of those things. And I made an appointment to get my IUD out. Long story short, it took 2 doctor appointments to try to get this thing out. Wow. And I was like, God, I thought, and they were planning to schedule surgery. I was like, God, I thought you told me to do this.
Wow.
What's going on? Like, why can't they get it out? So, they got it out. And we had some other words spoken over us about, our kids that were to come. And so I was just waiting on this promise. Didn't know when it was going to get here. Yeah. He kind of gave us some ideas as far as like months and stuff goes. But he said 2 months. It was October and December. And those 2 months are very significant. October was when we found out we were pregnant. October in 2019. But it wasn't, 2018 or 20, it wasn't any sooner than that. So just waiting on a promise to come to fruition. When God gives you a word, it's kind of hard to know what do you do with that. Yeah. Especially when you get multiple words. And I remember hearing in a sermon, sometimes you're just not supposed to do anything. Just keep it in the forefront of your mind, but don't make it your entire focus. So obviously every month you're reminded whether or not your promise is right there, or you have to wait till the next month to find out if your promise is there. So this all the IUD removal, the words that God had given us, this was all in July and August, and it was October. I still wasn't pregnant, and in the back of my mind I still had those words of the doctor kind of still there, like, why is it taking so long, in my opinion. And it had only been a few months at that point. It had only been a few months. And I had a really heavy period in October of that year, and I was like,
what year was that?
2017. So this is still 2017.
Okay.
And I said to God, I was like, I just need to know that you hear me. Like, I need to know what's going on. And he sent me this woman from Charlotte. She came to the boutique that I worked at when I was in grad school, and she had she could relate to my pain. And I had never met this woman before, and she had this beautiful little boy, and his name was Nehemiah, and he had the most beautiful blue eyes, and I'm like, oh, he's so cute. And I was talking to her, and we were, just sharing some things, and I just broke down. Wow. And who does that with a stranger? Like, when I say ugly crying, I mean, snot, and it's just, like, it's disgusting. Like, it's everywhere. But I had it just hurt, and it just weighed on me so much. And so, her and I became close, and, she's the reason why I moved to Charlotte and all those things. Wow. That's another story. But, so with that just helped me to keep going. And then in February of 2018, we lived in Blowing Rock, and my internship for grad school was down the mountain, which is a phrase. I did not know that was a phrase until we lived on the mountain. So I had to go down the mountain for internship. And I don't know if you know this, but I think you said you do. You've been to the mountains, right? There is no view like those. Like, it's just breathtaking every time. It does not get old, and I never took it for granted. I was heading down the mountain. The sun was coming up over the mountains, and Lauren Daigle's song Oceans was on, and Spirit lead me where my trust is without borders. And I was like, God, what does that mean? What does that mean to really just trust you? And that's kind of where the second part of the story really begins. Because I asked him, I wanted to know. I wanted to take my faith to a deeper level with all these things, going on and in the back of my mind. And I want to say it was 2-3 weeks after that, I found out I was pregnant for the first time.
Wow.
And I was so excited. I'm like, yes, like, it's finally happening. And the due date was December, and we were planning to go see our family so we could tell them in person. Wow. We took our announcement pictures. For us, because we had been met, engaged, and married at Penn State, we actually went to the Lion Shrine, and we had a little onesie. So we did like a little photo shoot there to announce after we had told our family that we were pregnant. And the whole time I was feeling this pain. And when you're pregnant, like, you have some cramping and stuff. But it was kind of like the endometriosis pain. It was really sharp.
Okay.
But it was really sharp. I just read, some cramping's normal. To me, that was kind of normal. I had been healed of the endometriosis in the moment that I was prayed over, but I didn't think much of that. I just kind of thought it was normal. And then I want to say it was like a couple weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks later, I started to see pink. And I was like, okay, well, when you see pink and you're pregnant, that's not good. So, called the doctor. They called for blood work. They found out where your pregnancy hormone levels are. And they said, okay, we'll check it on Monday. And I was anxious because it was a Friday. And you have to wait till Monday. Like, there's 2 days in between where you really have no control because it's the weekend and whatnot. So, that was a long weekend.
So, during that weekend, what was going through your mind? What were your thoughts like?
There was a lot of fear, and I was really trying to suppress it, not in a healthy way, just like I was saying, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. But I feel like the fear was almost more taking over than what
almost like you wanted positive. To will it to be.
Yeah. You can say that.
Okay, so it's the weekend and you're waiting on the blood work.
So they call me Monday. They tell me my numbers. They say on Wednesday they'll draw blood again to see where the numbers are in comparison to what they got on Monday, which they said it was kind of low for where I was expected to be at that time. I think I was about 8 or 9 weeks, and so Monday came and everything, it was still really light. It's just a little bit of pink. That's fine. It was, okay, we'll go. But then it was like on Monday, it started to look like it was
red. Wow.
Yeah. So
what was your emotional reaction when you were seeing that?
Fear. And a lot of pain. Fear and a lot of pain, because it was almost like, the way I looked at it then, it's like a ball's rolling downhill and you can't catch up to catch it. So it was, and emotionally it was just, it was hard. We called our pastor, which I had never done before, ever. That's another story. But just asking people for prayer. And I said to Josh, I was like, I can't deal with this. I don't know what to do, because it just, you're trying to stay positive, but then that's when you need other people of faith to kind of just back you up and carry you through something. Not saying that, your belief isn't good enough, but if you can borrow somebody else's faith and have people support you.
Preach right there. That is good.
It makes a big difference in how you move forward. So knowing that we had our pastor, his wife, and two or three other ladies in the church just praying over us in the situation, it was comforting to know that I wasn't in it alone. And our pastor gave us a ton of Bible verses that just spoke life into the situation. So what I started to do was I started to say those things out loud. And he also sent me a YouTube video of just to play it when I couldn't say it, just to play it and listen to it. And it was all the Bible verses just speaking life into the situation. And then Tuesday morning, it was really heavy. And I remember this, I'm just warning, this is probably too much. I remember getting up, going to the bathroom before my internship, turning around to flush the toilet, and I went, Mm-hmm. I was like, no, that's not it. That's not it.
No.
Mm-hmm. Like, so I was just, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Had my blood work drawn on Monday. Then on Wednesday, I got the phone call. I was on my way to another kid's house, and they called me and they were like, your numbers dropped significantly. I think it went from like 200 something down to like 30.
Wow.
And remembering what I had saw on Tuesday, hearing the number, it was like around 30. They said they wanted to draw blood work again. Oh, I went in for an ultrasound, and they said my body was still acting as if it was pregnant. So we still had so much hope, and we were just speaking life and all of those things. And my husband said to me, he goes, you know, I know God can. He can do anything, and I know what he's capable of. And he said, what are we going to do if he doesn't? And I said to Joshua, I said, we will praise him no matter what happens. If you ask me how I said that, I don't know how I said that. But it was coming from a place where it was, I knew my roots in my faith. We had people behind us that it just, I don't know. It just flowed. Because it was true. It was true. And that sounds crazy to go through something like that and to still want to praise him even though something was being taken away from you in that process. So then Friday, I didn't go to my internship. I stayed home, and a lady from church had come by the house, and she was staying, and I knew she had to leave, and I didn't know why. Like, why are you not leaving? Like, I love you, but like, don't you have to go?
Yeah.
And I was waiting for that phone call all day. I could not go to my internship. I was like all day just waiting for them to call me, because I still had hope that this was a time for God to do a miracle. Like, if he could do a miracle, it was now. Like, when it truly looked like there was absolutely no way it could happen. So they called me, and they told me my numbers were low. I want to say it was like 10 to 15, and anything under 15 was considered not pregnant.
Okay.
So they called me, they told me, and she heard. I mean, you don't have to be like 10 feet across the room, like, you know, the phone's loud, and she just looked at me, and I was like, I'm okay. And then the lady I had worked for at the boutique, she owned the boutique, she called me like a couple of minutes afterward and was like, where are you? It's like, what do you mean, where am I? Like, aren't you at work? Aren't you at the shop? And I looked outside, and we lived on a condo, and she was in like the grassy area of the condo, just looking like which condo could I be in. And I was like, I'm right here. And she goes, okay. Like, they knew I was getting that phone call today.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, what'd they say? And I told her, and it's like, I'm fine. My neighbor who lived across from me had bought us dinner, and she gave it to me, and she just walked away. And then that was kind of like, I just lost it. And another girl that I worked with, she was supposed to be on her way to Ireland, so she left work early, and she came to the stop sign where she either goes straight to go home or she goes right to go to my place. Now, she knew I was going to find out today, but she said she felt so strongly that she needed to turn right and go see me before she left. And so she came in. So in that moment that I was grieving, and I had other people around me. Josh was working, and my mom is in Pennsylvania, my mother-in-law is in Pennsylvania, but I was not alone in that moment. And so it was hard. It was really hard to just process what happened. But I can tell you that I was reminded of what I said to my husband, that we will, like I said, we will praise him anyway. And I can genuinely say that in that moment, even though I was grieving, I was saying, thank you, Jesus. Thank you for being a good God. Thank you for everything that you have done for us. And it came from this place where I didn't really understand where it was coming from, but I knew where it was coming from. So that was our first pregnancy. And shortly after that, I felt as though this was something that I was going to use to help other women who go through this. And I remember actually seeing a speech therapist I worked with. She went through this a few years before. And I remember watching her go through it, and I was like, God, I hope I never have to see anybody go through that again. It was hard to work with her and to watch her go through something like that. It is. that's not an easy thing to do. And so,
So when did you and Josh decide that you were ready to try again? Like, had you just continued with that process, or was there...
No,
there
definitely,
was
like, we're married, you know, like, I just couldn't. I just couldn't, because every time he would try, I was just reminded of what came of the last time and what we lost. It took a little bit, and it wasn't really like trying for the first few months after that. And it became more like, it is trying, but looking at the app on your phone, okay, these are my fertile periods, like, let's try to increase the chances here. It wasn't intentionally trying. It was still trying, though. But it took a few months. It was not an easy thing to even want to be able to think about afterward.
Okay.
But I still wanted it.
Yeah. There
was definitely a healing time in that sense, as far as like moving forward.
Okay. So when what year would you say that we're in at this point? Are we in 2018?
Found out I was pregnant in March 2018, lost the baby in April 2018. And then we moved to Charlotte in June of that year. So it was probably after that I was like, okay,
so we had probably met you.
Mm-hmm, we did.
Okay. So I think I just wanted to add this because Miguel and I literally live right next door to you. We found out that we were pregnant in October 2018, and Ava was due June 2019. So I remember, like, just that when we came home with our baby, I think you were still not pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, like, I remember I think we had just gotten home from the hospital that week, and then you guys brought us over some food. And I think we had talked about it on the phone, and you were just kind of sharing how you were finding small ways to express your faith and sow seeds and stuff. And I'll never forget, because, like, first off, you guys are very friendly neighbors, so
well,
I love that. But just the fact that, like, I remember the moment you were at the door, you brought the food, I had Ava in my arms, and like it seemed like you were still able to celebrate, even though you were going through your own process. And I thought that was beautiful, and I wanted to share that. So did you getting pregnant with Lydia, did that take you by surprise, or was that intentional? Or, like, tell us the story of how you have your little beautiful baby girl.
So, like you were saying, it was the concept of sowing and reaping, and it took a while to genuinely be happy for somebody that was pregnant when you were still waiting for years to come. And it had been, you know, a little bit that you had been waiting on this promise. So, like, I remember the day after we found out we lost the baby, Josh said, let's go to Grandfather Mountain. You need to just get out of the house. Let's try to... He was helping me grieve and helping me move forward. So we went, and I remember getting back, and I don't know why I did this. I was looking on Facebook, and 3 people announced they were pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
I was not... It just escalated, like, my feelings. And so it probably took me a good few months, maybe almost... I don't want to say almost a year, to truly be happy for somebody else. And then I remember learning, I think Teresa Belfoy was talking, and I heard her talk about, you know, when I wanted a baby, I went to baby showers instead of avoiding them. Like, I went to baby showers, and I gave to people who were pregnant and doing all those things. And so just understanding that concept of sowing and reaping in all areas of your life. It's not just in your tithe and in your money, but it's good. In anything you want to see come to fruition. Not that you're giving to get, but it does something to you internally and on a spiritual level when you
sounds wholesome.
Yes. Yeah. So,
sorry, I messed you up.
No.
Giving, sowing seeds, faith. But I asked you, like, How did Lydia come about? Like, what was that?
Oh, how did she come about? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, still just internally, just like this. It was this fighting battle, and there were 2 sermons in the year. I don't remember what year it is. In the year of 2019, that really changed my perspective on the situation and waiting for this promise. One was preached by Holly Furtick. It was called The Hope Cycle. And
that sounds good.
Oh,
Sorry.
It was good. And it was on Mother's Day that she preached
Wow.
it. And I remember waking up and I did not want to go to church. Why do you want to go to church on the day that mothers are celebrated? Are you a mother? Are you not a mother? You had one, but you lost one. Like, those are the thoughts that I was dealing with. And it was so hard to go, but I went anyway, because I know when things are hard, when you don't go, you don't get the thing that's going to move you forward versus staying stuck. So I went. So that was a sermon that was changing for me. And then, so that was in May. And then in June, the one that really revealed what was going on in my heart, it was Pastor Daniel Floyd. And he's from a church in Virginia, but he was preaching at Elevation that weekend. And he talked about, the sermon was called Work It Out. And he talked about, I want to say it was Hannah. She couldn't get pregnant, so one of those biblical stories. And he talked about God giving blessings and how when he gives you blessings, if your hands are open and he gives you the blessing and you close it, it's not yours to keep. It comes from God no matter what. So you have to receive with open hands when he gives you. When he gives you whatever it is that you're praying for, it's still his no matter what. God gives and takes away. And so I realized that had he given me a baby up until that point, that I would have clenched my fists and I would not have let go and truly understood that this is a gift from God and this belongs to God. And so that was a revelation, a revelation that I had in my heart.
Yeah.
That's what I knew I needed to do. So now it was processing. How do I give you, I asked, what does it mean to trust you without borders? How do I accept it and give it back to you at the same time? I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
So, actually, a couple months later, we were at my brother-in-law's wedding. He was getting married. And I was just like, you know what? God, I don't know why it was that weekend. I was not feeling good at all. This was like a couple days before we went up to Pennsylvania for his wedding. It's like super nauseous, and it didn't feel like the first time, like when I found out I was pregnant. I was like, man, my stomach is just like really bothering me.
Wow.
And it was, we have a goal of where we want to be financially before we had kids, and I was like, you know what, whatever, like it's gonna happen. Whenever he wants it to happen. I'm just gonna put my focus on getting us to where we want to be. And then when the baby comes. Like,
yeah.
It was literally just that. And this was October 2019. And super sick, super nauseous. I even went to the doctor, my primary care doctor. And I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm so nauseous.
Wow.
She's like, do you think you're pregnant? No. I told her, no, I'm not pregnant.
Gosh.
She's like, well, we can take a blood test and see. Nah, trust me, this doesn't feel like, no, I don't know why. Like, something just bothers me. We didn't leave with a conclusion, which was why I feel like you go to the doctor. But it turns out it's because I was pregnant.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was finally like...
So she did do the blood test?
No, because I told her not to.
How'd you find out then?
I took a pregnancy test. It took me 2 weeks to experience symptoms before. Because you have... When you're trying to get pregnant and you're waiting, you spend a ton of money on those things. And they're not, like, I wanted the one that said pregnant expensive. Or not pregnant. I don't want to deal with lines. I don't want a guessing game. I need to know. Am I or am I not? I told you, I'm very straightforward and to the point. Like,
well, what was your reaction?
Oh, I cried. I cried so hard because when we were at my brother-in-law's wedding, I don't drink. I don't drink. And I was kind of mad. But I was letting it go. And so I had like maybe 2 or 3 drinks. But for somebody who doesn't drink, that's enough. That's all you need. So like just I cried because I felt so guilty that I finally let go. I didn't care anymore. And I mean, I wasn't, when I say I don't drink, like, I'll mimosa here and there, or like if we go out to dinner, like that was fine up until that point. But we just stopped when you're trying to have pregnant. It's not something we're trying to have pregnant when you're trying to get pregnant.
Yeah, I didn't even notice you said that.
When you're trying to get pregnant, alcohol is something you definitely want to avoid. I cried with guilt and excitement, and I had so many emotions, and Josh was sleeping, and it was like 7 o'clock in the morning because I bought the test, and I was like, all right, if I'm going to take this, I'm going to take it in the morning because your levels are higher, and I just want to know, like, am I or am I not?
Yeah.
And I was expecting it to not be, because I had seen so many negative pregnancy tests before. So he was sleeping, and I was like, hey, hey, are you awake? Oh, and he was like so grumpy. I was like, I can't wait. Like, I can't wait. So finally he woke up, and I put the pregnancy test, our word for that year. When we, at our church, Elevation, when we give to an end of year tithing, which is going above and beyond the tithe. And we pick a word, and that's the word we're believing God for.
I like that.
I do.
I love that.
It definitely, that's another way of growing your faith. That's for sure. And so our word for 2019, while I was learning all these things, while my thought process is changing on how to accept this and just waiting for whenever our baby would come, I knew that was my word. And so I'm like, God, like, I gave to you believing that this is going to come forward. When is it going to happen? And it was when I let go, it happened. But I put the pregnancy test next to our word, which was Lydia. I didn't have the name Lydia, but it was baby, basically. And it was on a onesie that I had for, somebody had told me to get a onesie and look at it and just continue to believe God for it. It was one of those things I was just working on.
Wow, that's and super intentional faith right there.
It took me a while to even buy it.
Wow.
And the one that I bought was, and sometimes against all odds, miracles happen. So I was looking at that in our word, and a little white fluffy lamb for a year, almost a year at that point.
That's awesome.
So that was all up until we found out we were having
Lydia. That means you got pregnant in October 2019.
And October was one of the months that the Lord had spoken. I thought it was October 2017, not 2 years later, October 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. So it just took a little bit longer.
Awesome. So, okay. So Lydia was born June 2020? June 5th, 2020. Awesome. What would you say to someone, because I know you mentioned earlier, like, it's hard to go through, but it's also hard to watch someone else go through it. What would you say to both people? And then, like, what would you say, like, about God and all this, all that? So any direction you want to go. I gave you a lot there.
Yeah, it's okay. So to the one going through waiting on the promise, or to the one going through moving through the grief of losing a baby or multiple babies, at that point, keep your faith. And if you need to rely on somebody else's faith to get you through, share with the people who are going to speak life into your situation. So instead of dwelling on, this is hard, this sucks, and I'm not saying it's not, it does. But when you share with people who have faith that's going to carry you through this season of when you're growing your faith, you want words to be spoken over the situation that are thanking God for the promise that he's given you, even though you don't see it yet. And reminding you of, all that is coming your way. It's not, will it happen? Will it not happen? Oh, if it's God's will. Those aren't exactly the words you want to say to somebody when they're going through that. So find the women in your life that can get behind you and just, your body is able to get pregnant. Your body is meant to carry a baby. You are chosen to be a mother. Yep, the positive words of affirmation. So you want to have people around you that can speak those things. And to you yourself, I would recommend, I'm not saying get over it, but if you want to move forward
and get through it,
I would, there's a few books I would recommend. One of them is called Cultivate by Laura Cassie.
Okay.
It's Not Supposed to Be This Way by Lisa TeKirst. Grieving the Child I Never Knew. This one's a devotional. And you just read through the one that applies to you that day that you're experiencing. It's not like you have to do it from start to finish. Prayers and Promises for a Supernatural Childbirth. That has the words of affirmation to, when you're trying to conceive, or when you are pregnant and battling that fear of what if something happens. It gives you the words to speak when you're feeling those things.
Also scripture, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so scripture to that God has already declared that this is done and this is my will for you. And then Hung by the Tongue. This is an older book. It will teach you how the power of life and death is truly in your tongue, and sheds light on some biblical stories that I really was not kind of aware of or ever read on my own time or heard in church about the power of life that you speak into your situations, or death. You have the ability to speak either, and it may seem small, but really increasing the positive. I thought I was a positive person. I'm gonna tell you right now, I was positively negative.
Positively negative.
Like, I'm positive, but and when you follow it with the but, you're kind of you're canceling out, what it is that you're really saying. So, going through those things alone is hard. So find people who have either been through it and have gotten through it. I wouldn't go to the person who is stuck and trying to figure it out themselves. Like, I would find somebody to partner with that has gone through it and has the promise, that baby.
Yeah.
Because they've been through it and they can help you work through it. So, and it's just a way to not stay stuck. To the person watching somebody go through it, I think I have a little bit more to say. They lost somebody. I remember there was a couple things that were said to us that I would definitely recommend not saying. One of them was, you can try again. And that came from a good spirit. It all comes from a good spirit. But you find out you're pregnant, and all of a sudden you're in love with this child that you've been waiting for, and you have all the excitement and you're planning all of the things, and then for somebody to say you can try again, it came from somebody who didn't go through this. The women in my life who had gone through this, I'm sorry for your loss. And I wouldn't ask, what can I do? Because it's another thing for them to process. And
do something.
Just do something. Just send a card. Bring them dinner. Just do something they love. Give them a gift. Bring them flowers. Literally, so
That's
simple.
Nice.
Just the act in acknowledging that they lost somebody. And the biggest thing that my husband did for me in this time was, when I cried, and I cried hard, he would not say anything. He would just hold. That was literally it. And that meant so much. Because we didn't need to say words. Because sometimes when we say words, like when talking about the power of life and death, is we kind of nip ourselves in the butt and end up unintentionally causing more pain. To the person who is trying to conceive, I think, if you have an idea somebody's going through it, I would ask them how they're doing. When you know what's going on and they've been waiting and maybe are having like a hard time, or just are in this place of confusion. If just ask them how they're doing, and they will tell you. I wouldn't exactly bring it up unless you know that that's how your relationship is. But I know Josh's grandfather passed away 2 weeks after we lost the baby.
Oh wow!
And so we went back up to Pennsylvania for the funeral, and we were sitting at a table. I didn't know half these people. These were all their friends, and they grew up in the same community, and they'd never really left. And he came up to Josh's grandmother and was like, "Hey, you got these two youngins here. When are the great-grandchildren coming?
Oh, gosh.
What are they waiting for?
Oh,
You think grandchildren are the best. wait till you have great grandchildren. And I'm not saying this against him. He was, obviously older. He didn't know we lost a baby 2 weeks ago. Nobody knew except for our immediate family what we had gone through. But I just sat there and I could feel the emotion coming, and I had to get up and leave. And so at this point, I'm very cautious if I ask. I don't ask, when are you having kids? If they bring it up, that's fine. That's kind of their business, because you don't know what somebody's going through, and you don't want to unintentionally. I'm not talking about walking on eggshells, just being more mindful of how we ask questions and things like that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's good. And then I kind of like just the brief way you described your husband being there for you. Like, even during like his own loss, I know the experiences are different, but just it being as simple as just being there. Like him not having to stretch himself, just being there for you. It was really cool. So I want to say thank you so much for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
And I think it's like I've been like getting into reading the Bible in a year, and like reading just stories of like their lives. And it's like interesting seeing how God is like walking with you through yours. Like it's awesome. Like you just, and you can't put it into words, because it's just like kind of like an outside view. So that was really nice. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you guys can, if you guys want to see Melissa, I'm gonna be sharing some pictures of her husband, her family, their baby girl on my account, just so you guys can get a sneak peek into their real life and all that good stuff. So thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for listening. Feel free to DM me to send me your feedback. Check out the description below to follow me on social media. This podcast is listener supported. Don't forget to subscribe. Remember, you are fully known and deeply loved. I'll see you in the next one.